Call meeting to order. Renee, roll call, please.
I'm just making sure we're recording here. Check. Yes, okay. Mr. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Glennon.
Here.
Chairman Lyons.
Here.
Also present and participating are town manager Greg Dunham, our assistant town attorney Trey Nazaro, Gary Iliopoulos, Mark Marsh, Hollis Tidwell. Absent with notice is Bill Koch, and I am also here in present.
Okay, the minutes, any revisions, additions?
I move they be approved as presented.
Second, please. All in favor? Aye. Are there any additions or withdrawals? Janet, okay. Our next meeting, 2 weeks from today, May 9th. How would that work for people? If you're not able to add to it.
8:30 on the 9th.
Yeah.
So I'm not available that if I'm relevant.
I think it's important we participate, so,
You've done the whole week.
Just the 9th and the 10th.
okay, I mean, we could do it the day before. That work with everybody?
I won't be here for this.
Yeah, Mr. Koch really wanted to be here for that. What about the 13th, Monday the 13th?
I tell you what, let's set down some optional dates.
Do everyone get the,
And then we
okay,
can come back.
we could do that.
I guess no communication from the public. So let me hand it over to staff for them to introduce our guests, and thank you for arranging for these two gentlemen to enlighten us.
Can I just make a quick housekeeping?
We might have been talking about being coached. Yeah, that's like two gentlemen in there. Thank you, Paul. I actually, not that I do, I don't recognize. If you could introduce you.
I need to make a quick housekeeping matter. I had a hard time understanding some of y'all. So when you lean back on your chairs, my microphone doesn't pick up. So when you're speaking, if you could just get a little closer to the microphone when you're speaking so I can pick you up. So I had a hard time with the minutes this time around, understanding some. That goes for you guys right there too. So we have Gary Iliopoulos from GE Architecture.
Yes.
We have Mark Marsh from
Yes.
Bridges and Marsh, and he brought Hollis Tidwell from Bridges and Marsh as well.
Thank you for the gentlemen coming. Trey, you want to kick it off?
Sure, so yesterday we circulated a discussion topics memorandum that had a few ideas that we wanted to build off of, given previous discussion with Dana Little at our last meeting. And then also included with that was a color map overview of the core district to the extent that we wanted to engage in any sort of mapping or overlay discussion in determining how we could maybe divide the core into certain districts with different zoning regulations or additional zoning regulations that would reflect sort of what the committee's goals are here.
Let me add to that. I suggested that Trey develops this running list of items that we discuss as possibilities to address massing. You'll see some pros and cons in the context of each one of them. What I'd like to do in the next meeting is go through each one of those, and we can identify individually or collectively what are the pros and what are the cons, and try to start massaging these thoughts to a more definitive action. Today, as part of the process, we had decided to invite guests to give us some suggestions on how we might address massing. And so, when they was good enough to organize these gentlemen to come, I think, let me start with Mark. I know that Mark clearly appreciates the core district. Just thinking of a couple of houses that you've been involved with, one of which is one of Gulfstream and Gulfview, Hoskins House, which is such an incredibly charming house. You may particularly walk charming. And another very interesting house just up the street in Gulfstream is the Holdings house. It's a house that's one story. Right now, it actually has not the proper tiles. It has asphalt. Thank you. And I know you're going to be redoing that. And so trying to preserve these charming houses, these understated houses. And as you'll also appreciate, in the town, we have a lot of homes which are going to turn over. So we're trying to address that. Would anybody like to add to my introductory comments? Okay. So I'm sort of, we're throwing you to the wolves and see what you can come up
Just to introduce Tom again. He's a design architect in our firm, and he is, I would say, one of the premier zoning analysts in terms of to
He's off to you, you can meet him too.
No, he's very good at talented guy, super bright, and mainly the fact that we deal a lot, as I think you're aware, in Palm Beach, and they have one of the most sophisticated methods of mass control, which is cubic contact, which, or whatever you do, never adopt that. It's very complicated, and that's why Alex is here, because he understands that, he can explain it. There are also other elements that are going to come in, and we've got a few illustrations to show you about mass. Restoration is going to preserve, hopefully, the character. But as we all know, real estate's changing, properties are flipping, and the prices are off the chart. And people are, investors or buyers want to have something that reflects the value of the property. That's where the challenge is. I'd say in general, your code and your guidelines work well. I think Gary, I'm sure will support that. We have had no problems. We were able to interpret. It's when you're being pushed or forced, I should say, into trying to overbuild or overdevelop something that really can't sustain what the program may be. That's the difficulty. And that's what we face. And, most of us have a conscience and professional and want to, either direct our clients to other properties or these are your limitations. And in most cases it works, but obviously it depends on the individual. And so this town, like all these coastal towns, and I would say Palm Beach, Ocean Ridge, I leapfrog over Manalapan because that's a runaway train by itself. Ocean Ridge, we're going through that. I was the chair of the planning, zoning, architecture board. Things were starting to happen there that I wasn't happy with. And I was in the minority, so I stepped down and let them do their thing. But at least I did my part for as long as I could. Gary knows. I gave him a hard time a couple of times. No. But, and then obviously Gulfstream. So those are the comps that you have to really look at in terms of similarity because their histories are similar. And Delray again is another runway train. So you're surrounded by the areas that in some ways may be a relief because people instead of investing here may go to other areas. So the massing, lot coverage, you know, your FAR works, it's fair. It's, as you know, it's a fluctuating scale on the size of the acreage or the property size. But one of the things, the styles, obviously, architectural styles come and go. We're going through a period here now where, you know, contemporary is very much in view. And most people are, I think personally, doing it just to keep up with the Jones. You know, they want to be current with everything else. And it goes against everything before. And I'm just using that as an example. You've got scale, flat roofs, you know, attempted flat roofs, you know, just it's so incongruous with the town of that area of town. So I think the coverages, CCRs, you know, the FAR, they all work. Not everybody's satisfied with them because, again, it's a value issue. But what I'd like Hollis to do here, just quickly, is to show what one of the few things, a couple of things Palm Beach has done, which I think works, and it may be well worth investigating, is what's called the angles. Now that's it up for Hollis and let it go through. And we've got, these are some projects we did, and you'll see they're different sizes. There are 5 slides. He'll take you through and just show you some of the criteria we have to work with.
All right, so Hollis Stilwell here. We brought a couple projects that are using angle of vision mainly. Angle of vision is something Palm Beach uses to, if you imagine the center line of your lot at the street, against the street, you may have seen this in other places, and then an angle basically along the ground that opens up, and your building cannot go past that angle. That angle extends forever. Your building can't go past that angle. I wish I had a little pointer here to point up on the screen. But you can see on the right side of this slide, there's 2 dotted line angles that pretty much appear near the middle of the lot. And one's very wide and the other one's a little more acute right here on the right. That wider line is how far you could build on this lot, and the other one is how far we did build, the width of the house. So you can see now also on the right side of this slide is the front yard setback, the dotted line going north-south. This house can be all the way up at that, that's the front yard setback. Now you can see where that angle of vision line, the most obtuse angle, says, well, that's as far as you can go. Your building can't go any further than that. So that angle of vision on this lot, if you wanted to be way up near the street, would push you back, slowly push you further and further back. So then you could extend your side wings out as you step back, which in this case would break down the mass, or that appearance of mass.
Yeah, the streetscape.
Right, and angle vision works with the street, and that's kind of what in these small little areas you feel, right? You feel that, oh, this house feels imposing on me compared to this other small, maybe 1-story that's set back. We can go to the next
And
slide.
this, just as a point, this is a large lot and a large house.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm glad you see other examples of small, but it's the same philosophy or the same.
Right, and we could zoom in on that.
This sort of pushes the house back naturally, right?
Now, exactly. Now, you will wind up with lots which it matches exactly. You know, an angle of vision matches exactly with the setback. And you can tell that at some point, Palm Beach studied this and they kind of probably said, all right, we have a ton of 100-foot lots. And they probably played with it and they said, okay, what's that number? 100-degree angles at 90. They tried to figure it out so that it didn't seem, overly complicated. This one right here, again, 100 degrees is allowed on this lot. It looks like it's I can't see, I think this is a 110-foot wide lot. And it's on a corner, so this is one's a little bit interesting. It's a corner lot, which I think you guys do the same thing. Both street yards wind up being the same width, right? So on this side yard, they couldn't go to the 15, which you can tell here anyway. If they could go to the 15, that part on the left side of the screen would actually step back. It couldn't just be big and shouldery all the way across the line. So then we showed we're at 75 if we meet because it's under 100. It's a pretty good tool. And even in this case, I think the red dotted line going across left and right up there, you can vaguely see that's the front yard setback. So with,
Feedback from what you're actually about.
right, so if we would have pushed this house further up, we could have gotten all the way to the setback on this. But in this case, I think we were looking at the houses to our left and right and how we wanted to fill. This is Clark Avenue in Palm Beach, so there's a lot of consideration.
So if you went all the way to the dotted line, then that house would be very big.
Well, no, so this house is allowed 100, and I believe I'm showing 75 is what we had. What we're bringing to the town is 75. So in this case, you're allowed 100 of angle of vision.
But you could, Tom, to your question, you could have, say, the right side of that house would go to the front, then you have to pull the side. So
You had to step it. So
it always steps back. You're not dealing with a sheer face.
right.
on the street.
And I wanted to show this one because this one did have that larger side yard setback. And even if you were at the allowed 100 degrees, you still couldn't, this house wouldn't be big just because of the nature of the side yard setback. All right, maybe next one.
Do you still cap on side setbacks at 15 feet?
Absolutely. It's 2-story 15, 1-story 12.
Two-dimensional control.
Is it,
Street.
it's a two-dimensional control,
In terms of the color.
but it does create three-dimensional variations.
And I just said there's 12 and a half feet on a 1-story home instead of 15.
In Palm Beach, in RV, in what they call it. RV is kind of like your court section. It's the downtown, it's the north end, the smaller lots, the ones that are more historical.
They do 12 and a half and then 15 for the 2 stories.
But we're 15 even on 1-story.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
right.
And you're good, that's really good. You're 15 minimum with a 30%, I think, of the.
So you're definitely good.
Right. Now, that does lend people to do sheer sidewalls, right?
Not an issue.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
that's nothing. There are 4 sides to each house.
right.
And people look at just the front. The impact to those shear walls on the sides is something you as a board should be looking at. Because the impact to the, to the neighbors.
Neighbors.
Yeah, and we do try and focus on it.
And if you see the one, if you come over the bridge into the Ocean River and Ocean Avenue, you see that monster that's been built on the south side. That was all wall addition, just a solid, and I'm just diverting here a little bit, because what we have and what you've been seeing are houses that are just built with a front facade, and the sides have no relevance in the designer's vision or the owner, and a rear. And the side impact comes into play, which you're all aware of with the FEMA, because now you have to elevate, so you've got to put in retaining walls, and that's the other thing that's going to challenge the town. Is that, you're average 5 to 6 feet above your ground level, just in the corner. And so you build a new property, to get to that level, you're gonna have to retain the side yards. So you're gonna install a retaining wall. Again, you've gotta be careful not to allow them to just go up 5 or 6 feet with a wall, and then the neighbor just looking at this inner city kind of setting with a wall.
Right, the neighbor sitting down at 2 or 3, they're gonna be up at that
And we
7.
have that in the motion ready, but what you've got to encourage is terracing, where you come up maybe 2.5, 3 feet, and then go 10 feet, and then create another step, so you step it up. So please keep your eyes out for that, because you're gonna have neighbors and residents screaming.
There are, you can terrace from the street as well, it's important from the streetscape to terrace back in ways, because otherwise you just get these driveways and watercourses that just lean up towards the house. And that doesn't help with this indication of the volume and the tunneling effect.
So you would have,
Jerry did that on the new Polo house isn't built yet, remember the house you did, you terraced that up.
Right.
It's 5 feet above the road.
Right. No, it's coming. I mean, it's,
So I think that's gonna be your biggest issue is speed.
yeah,
Most of your homes are, let's say, at an elevation of, as they just said, 5 feet. The code changed and how we read it, so now the code's actually a foot and a half. So even if you built the house, let's say 10 years ago, it was to code, now it's a foot and a half lower. And that's your issue, because that's part of that medicine.
Yep.
And the other factor is what, that people can't renovate these homes because of FEMA guidelines, and they're running into that problem, they can only do so much. So I think that's a huge challenge for you guys.
and the only relief you get from FEMA is if you're a landmark or historic.
It's slow.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
If you're a landmark or historic, you get relief. from
And
FEMA.
is that some legal definition or could we create our own definition?
It's I think it's a.
Yeah, I think it would seem to be illegal, you would have to, I don't believe your guy, you got anything in, it's not historic.
No.
You have buildings,
we have a strong homes. and they-
You definitely need it, yes, and you would have to develop those.
Bill Cook just looked in his grave. So
Yeah. So what kind of relief do you get, Nathan, landmark, historic, what kind of relief would you get?
Immediately, you don't have to raise it to a minimum. You don't have to be in the
You can
middle.
do substantial renovation.
that's utilize the existing elevation.
Yeah.
Like,
Otherwise,
your new additions would have to meet it.
Yeah.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
You have, it's a percentage.
Right.
So I think it's 15% or.
Hmm.
So it's very flexible.
How long has this angle code been in place in Palm Beach? Is it recent or is
it's
it?
been there since I've been there, since
Been there.
25 years that I've been
Yeah,
there.
I think it's 79 or 80.
Okay.
And they regulate the angle.
Well, they did have a number, so, look, can we go to the next one, I think? I'm
It's a-
gonna give you, I'll explain it hopefully, I think it's the next.
Oh, you want number 4?
Sure. This is the next one.
Yeah, this is number 3.
So, I don't know what the angle is, but this is a decently wide lot. And the way, so Palm Beach has some things where in their zoning, in the RB district, which is like your core district, where the lots are typically 100 by 110, they're in that range. But some of them are 50, some of them are 75, and you have to go in for site plan review. If your lot does not conform to what the code says, at the minimum, you have to go for site plan review. And that's on the variance side, and it's just a kind of a rubber stamp. They want to look at it and make sure that on these smaller lots, or larger lots, you're not impacting it. It's just an overview. But as your lot grows over the code deemed area and the code deemed width, that angle grows.
Right.
It grows, and which you think would help you, but doesn't necessarily help you. It leads a decline, right? And so
Why would that be then? It seems like it's wider.
it's strange. So as you, it allows you more on the street. So they just know that if your lot is really wide in one of these areas, they're allowing you to be wider, but what happens is your setbacks actually change as well. So, they have what's RA, which is the state district, right before you get into town in Palm Beach. And then they have the RAA, which is the massive lots that are like right after Sloan's Curve all the way up through there. So if your lot jumps over a certain number in the core district, your area, say you buy 2 lots, you get this massive area, where you get the RAA setbacks. You go from a 15-foot side yard setback to a 30. You go from a 25 and 30-foot front yard to a 35-foot. So they push you as your lot kind of grows, and obviously they spend a lot of time thinking about this.
Well, in our code, once you get to a certain square footage, the FAR starts to decline.
Correct. And that's the same concept, right, because you're trying to work on the volume. So they did it, but they did it on side yard setback, they did it on every single one.
Which are the key things here. I mean, what's the impact to the perimeter of the property?
Right, they realized that they didn't want in someone bought like double lot in downtown to all of a sudden have the same side yard setbacks as the neighbor. then there's this house that's twice the size, and it's squeezed in there, so, okay, we're gonna buffer it here. And
But you see,
so they have a little sliding scale, or a little, as things grow, you add some numbers to it, and it works really well, works well. Now, you don't have a lot of lots in the quarter district that are larger than the other ones. There's maybe one or two that are a little bit bigger.
there's only a few. You see it from this now, you can go, part of the house can go to the front setback. But with the angle, it staggers the balance of the house, so you get that, you get away from that sheer frontage, and you have the stagger. In this case, it will stagger single story, 2-story. So you get a much more,
They also do something in Palm Beach where, in this case, you can see 3 horizontal lines at the setback, at the front yard setback. They allow you to push your house towards the street in the RV district if you relieve it on the back. So they kind of give you, if you, because a lot of these houses are, think about if you come in and develop just 2 just box homes, and they're back to back, and they share a backyard, well, then you get the same feeling that you have on the street in your backyard. You get this kind of canyon tunnel effect, so they give a little relief if you don't push all the way to the back with, say, cabana building or things like that, and if you come in another 5 feet, they'll let you go to the street 5 foot closer. Now, but when you go to the street, you get that angle. So now your front of your building's gonna be a little smaller. Right, so it helps you create a little bit of character, or character max, right? Character max.
but just the reference, when we say RV, which is the Palm Beach, it's similar to the core.
Right.
And that's why we're using those.
Think all north end, small streets, think Clark, think anything downtown, right, mainly downtown.
And we have the C blocks, which are only 50 feet wide.
And the C blocks really have, if you want to drive up down the C blocks, they have a lot of what you're dealing with here. With low C streets, some of them are down 2.
2.5.
Streets get warm sometimes on C streets with C view, C spray, and C breeze. And for a couple of years, there were houses that were going, an old historic house at 2.5. Boom, the same house at 7.
So it's
And they thought really quickly.
a sawtooth.
Yeah.
situation. We did a house 4 years ago, and we were up at 7, and the street's at 2.5. Our neighbors, as Thomas just said, I think it was 3.2 or something. So we had to build those retaining walls. We staggered it, but again, everybody went crazy. The whole block, the whole street went nuts, and we were the bad guys, but we terraced everything, and they got over it. But there's nothing you can do.
Where is that? I'd be curious to see that.
Mid block on C spray.
Yeah.
South side, we won't tell you what that address is. You'll figure it out.
It's on the north side.
Is it on the north side? You'll figure it out.
And for a corner lot, is there a double angle of vision, or like, what's the deciding road?
Whichever one you put your address on, your front door comes your address.
And then I should try to find.
So can you go back to, because that's a good, that's a good question.
Change their address.
Yeah, that was it.
Trey, how do you guys establish that? Is it the narrow portion of the lot?
So I want to say that we've had this come up, and, I want to say that if the resident wanted to put their front yard in a certain spot,
Right.
then we did not fight that, even if their address was a different road, if they were on, following, I don't say any name specifically, but no, if they wanted to build their house using that front yard setback from a certain street, we said fine, regardless of what their address was.
Yeah, because Mark's right, in Delray, what they do is they go with the narrow portion, that's the front setback. The address is separate, because it's usually based on our fire department, on how they're gonna be coming down different roads, and that's how they establish the number. So if somebody wanted a Seabreeze address versus whatever, Breach or something, they can switch that, but their setbacks can't. It's gonna be based on the lot size, not the configuration.
Yeah, in Palm Beach, though, because you think about it, if you get north of, say, Publix and that sort of stuff, and you're going out Ocean, you get into the north end, and there's all these little streets, Reef Road, whatever, but there's a ton of corner lots, and you can have South Ocean Boulevard address. People want to have a South Ocean Boulevard address, and, or you can have a address for your side street. So this one right here is on the side of the street, it's on the corner, the top is Clark, and on the left is Central, and Central only goes from an alley in the south all the way up to Barton. But they could have said we wanted a central address. Now, zoom out just a little bit more. It would have been silly, because look how long this line is, right? Look what that had done to that. If you would use your angle of vision, it would have pushed that, and it would have been a long, narrow, it would have never worked. But that goes to the question, if you have a funky shaped lot, it does change things, which way you face, it does change things.
So just to be clear, let's say that it was more of a square lot, on a corner, you could have the front of the house on either two sides. And then you would pick the triangle.
Correct.
That's it.
Sure. Hollis, I have a question. So I think the origin of the committee was more like we were scared of the massing more second floor. This is really interesting, but it seems as though if you use this, it can almost motivate two-story houses instead of one, because you're kind of cutting into the setbacks when you do this.
Great question.
It was really good, it really, in my opinion, if I doesn't, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would think that if you're trying to, as you design the house, you're trying to, get a certain type of frontage and feel along the street, and hopefully that's this side of the table, we don't look at just our own, look at the neighbors, look at how it all relates, that it would almost make you think more streetwise and then break the house apart, right? You're looking at it in an interesting way, and that's true, because I can see a client coming in and saying, no, just make it as wide as that is, and make it big and tall, and that is a way people could go.
Let's show the other.
Oh, so then we got this one.
One other thing, so everybody realizes, so like when we built our house, we thought it would be two-story because we would get more square footage. Then we realized that we could get just as much square footage on one story, but basically the outline goes to the setbacks in each in order to get the one story that size. But if I start integrating this, it would have probably, it may have pushed me back to two-story. That's what I'm.
Right, so that's why they have multiple, so you got the side yard setback, the changes, right, you have this, they also have what's called, building height plane, which we'll look at in just one second.
This is what, to answer your question.
And this is where we should maybe talk about what the CCR thing is. Right, you guys have FAR, which allows you to use the one-story home, right? You're able to keep your floor area ratio and spread out as much as you want. Or you can be a box. You can do FAR and be a box. Right? It can be a cube. It can be just a perfect cube, and it would all work out. CCR, cubic content ratio, is just a ratio of volume to the footprint of your lot. That's it. Right? They came up with some crazy formula, and it works. And it basically says this is how much volume you can have on your lot based on your square footage of lot. You can carve that up any way you want. And the secondary factor that they have is lot coverage. And we don't have lot coverage here, you just have FAR. And lot coverage combined with CCR makes you think of volume as almost like a piece of clay that you kind of carve at, and you take that piece and you put it on the ground floor. And now you're moving things around, because your lot coverage, you can do your CCR and your volume, which relates to FAR, and you look at it, and you're like, we're not covering as much of the lot as they allow us to. Let's get some more ground floor. You gotta take away from second floor. Right? If you think of just clay, and that's the best way to describe cubic content, carving away a block of clay. In the same volume, you have that volume, you're allowed. Now carve it away and put it along the ground or on the second floor. And FAR, I think FAR and lot coverage together could probably get there.
Yeah.
If you thought about what one-story and two-story lot coverages would do, that could probably get there.
Yeah, I would discourage CCR, because it is a very complex.
Very far, roughly the same.
It's the same, but it's taken to a whole different level. It's a cumbersome.
Right, and then one last, let's go.
This one is it. To answer that question, I think we've seen this.
One more.
One more?
Building area.
Okay, we zoom in at the bottom. Now, this doesn't show really the impact, but as you can see in this cross section of the lot,
Zoom it up.
I don't know if I can anymore.
so we're on the beach here, we got the road, the right of way, on South Ocean Boulevard. Now, angle of vision is a line which goes from where your lot, your grade, it's the street right away. And it goes up to a certain angle, and your house is not allowed to, it goes on forever. Your house, no part of your house is allowed to penetrate past that line. Right? So if you want a tall house, again, you might have to push it back, but you're gonna hit that line and setback. And this one we would, if we scroll up just a little bit. I believe if we were to push this house further up onto the setback, we would probably hit it. Go up into,
So it's not only this ground, but you go there.
All the way?
yeah, there we go. So you can see the front yard setback is that first dotted line in the yard here. And if we would have gone all the way there, that angle of vision, we would have had to have a one-story portion on the street. And then,
I'm gonna show you something. This is my own out there. That's something called a triangle, same concept.
Same.
I happen to not like sign in my house.
I got the everything. Meeting guy on TV.
You know, if we're gonna have the house across my daughter, that was the way we had to build it. But you can see how steep, you see that, it would violate the picture on those.
Right. So
And we don't, I mean, here you've got codes on this pitches.
Palm Beach was, but then we think that's pretty severe. But that's how,
But again, your code actually prevents that from happening
correct.
right now.
Yes. And that's huge. Your code really has to do with styles, and Palm Beach talks about styles, but you gotta kind of dig into it a little bit more. And I think it's good because it keeps people, when they look at it, they're like, whoa, we can't come in here and do a house, no trim or not appropriate detailing. We have to, and that's what you're seeing in other places. You're seeing the house design detailing. Detailing breaks down the scale of the house. A big house with good detailing makes it feel, more human scale, more proportion, right? And then carry the detailing around the sides, and then it really starts to feel appropriate.
That imagery which we worked on in the late '80s, to create those visual references. And preferred, and I think we gotta look at those preferred, discouraged, and prohibited. Those are dangerous variables.
What happens when you have a shallow lot though with that? I mean, you want to do a two-story house. Is there a rear setback also? There must be rear setback.
There's actually a real rear height plane. That was called height plane.
Right.
There's a rear height plane. So that you don't need that hanging effect in the back. Yeah.
And side.
Yeah.
It doesn't create a very big envelope for you. That's the first thing you do when you get a piece of yardage, you look at what you decide and
That's
match.
usually the first call you get from somebody. How much can I put on this?
That's the first thing. In this case, we have to go through all these angles and setbacks.
Yeah, we think to give people a general, I'll say, hey, your lot allows 6,000 on the ground floor and 10,000. Right, that's what I would say.
Like we said, raw numbers till we.
And that 10,000 is in the cubic content, the way they do it, might not be a max, right? Bring your overall down, that number grows, right? Things.
That's where the cubic content catches, because volume, that's when volume becomes a part of that formula.
You don't want us to go there.
I think it's very complex.
I've heard that numerous times.
I would suggest that I would try to do those.
Yeah, I think using angles, that's why we wanted to illustrate today the value or the potential to overcome the fear of these, mass vertical structures you're going to be facing unless you do something right.
But that fall back on too, what you guys, or you said right at the beginning, your guidelines are actually good.
Yeah,
They really are. I mean, they're, not only are they understandable, but not only because of your process, you guys are really looking at every single thing. I think one of the things you want to look at is, first of all, your building height is at 30. You know, most municipalities, it's higher. So you've already got that established. But you do have to understand when you're looking at it, there is, what do you want for ceiling heights and everything? So the majority of homes now are usually at a minimum of 10 feet, let's say to the ground floor. Here in Gulfstream, you're going 2 stories, you pretty much are going to 9 feet based on what you're doing. You also have limitations on your flat roofs. So normally when people are trying to do it, they want to squeeze it up higher, they got to go bigger flat roof, your code addresses it. So there are some good things you guys have. I think this angle approach is another great mechanism. It doesn't make it too complicated, but it's putting some other guidelines in place for you guys that actually helps the architecture. You're talking about 1 story versus 2 stories. Bring up a great point. Now, if you're representing the client goes with that 1 story, in theory, it could be more expensive because you have more piles for the foundation versus going up. So there are different things that come into play. A lot of times, Mark said it, we're trying to control the client. We're trying to do what we feel is conscious design. And sometimes these guidelines actually help force them to do it.
Let me just go back to the process that you mentioned. One part of the process, I think, that you were exposed is not having a more formal pre-act meeting with architects or owners to go through what, even from what we call schematic phase, just to have, because the pre-act meetings now, you're bringing ARPB documents in, you know, with some feedback when you can. But I think if you can encourage or set up a method by which before, because that takes the onus enough. We're doing all the interpretation. And if we said this is what you can't do, and the town says, no, I think we can do this. You know, we need to resolve all those potential conflicts from a development standpoint.
Yeah, when you do pre-app in Palm Beach, you bring site plan in, generic floor plans, and elevation. That's it. And then you get on the Zoom, and you're sitting there with an ARCOM staff person, historic planners, you sit with civil, they're all on it. They'll look at things like, hey, you know, you got this easement, I looked it up, it's really not that easement, you gotta do this. Don't forget, you got angle vision on this lot, don't forget that you got, you know.
And you don't need to go to that level. I think you just need to, I think staff is now,
No, it doesn't have to be a lot of sheets.
and maybe a member of the ARPB should have a meeting with an applicant and just to kind of see what the intent is in the development, rather than, you know, and it's a sad time for us when you walk in and you go, oh. You walk up. It's like,
I thought that might go.
Well,
Guess not.
We like saying no. That is important. On the pre-act, you would include a member of the ARPB?
it's up to you, or
Is that what they do?
Or just staff.
staff.
It's a staff.
I think, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if a member of the ARPB is available, I think it never hurts, because you can see the evolution of what.
So what you're, in some ways, you're presetting the mindset of the homeowner early on. So if the homeowner is spent 3 months in their head with some idea, and then all of a sudden it shows up here, and we say,
Well, you
Yeah.
can eliminate it. I mean, you're not suffering a lot of conflicts from what I see. There are issues that come up. You can resolve those. And it may be from a technical, and, you know, Trey's master of the community code.
But it's truly as far as you tell a client, when a client wants to do something, the first thing we normally will tell them, okay, that's probably not gonna happen. Okay, we're gonna establish right now it's not happening. I know when we've met with staff, we go through stuff and right away, they go right to the point that we've already told the client, here, probably not gonna happen. And Renee's like, look at our code, it ain't happening, you know, Trey's like, yeah. So I think that's still good. I mean, I love the fact of pre-app meetings are great. They really do help us move the project right along.
Well, but review is not formal at all, it's just a set time, you do them.
I mean, Renee, Trey, when we have pre-app meetings and
the architect or owner, or whoever comes in, the involved in pre-app, what percentage of people usually come there and really have designed something that meets pretty much all of our codes? I mean, I think that happens a lot.
By the time it gets to the board, it's been through.
Well, I'm saying.
No, even before this.
I mean, I'm saying for the pre-app, I mean, that's the first rattle out of the box.
Yeah, we try and make them bring pretty much what they're gonna do to the
Yeah.
pre-app, so we can,
Now, there are some that have done their due diligence and
Mhm.
prepared for it.
Mhm.
And then there's
Some
some
that-
that.
I've been doing this in town for 40 years, so you know what they're expecting. But I know that you're gonna get people on outside, outside of town, people are gonna come in here with
Oh, yeah.
beautiful design, and then you say,
You know what, and that's already happened.
well, that's what I'm saying, but you gotta, be in fairness to the client, ourselves, anybody that's involved in that preliminary aspect of the project. You know, because sometimes clients don't want to listen to our interpretation.
Absolutely, and that's happening to us as our population changes.
Absolutely.
And it's gonna continue.
It's younger and people are saying, well,
And
the
the
more
more
aggressive,
aggressive,
it's already telling me I can't do this.
Right.
So
I'm the king of my castle.
the pre-apps, the
Yeah.
pre-apps,
I can't do that.
Right, for my house.
We've heard it all.
the pre-apps.
I usually walk out of the conference room and say, it's not my class.
That's what I'm saying, Mark, I would say that our pre-apps, over the years have become more challenging.
yes, and that was at the direction of the commission, for us to be
Yes.
more stringent in our pre-apps, so that they get to the ARPB and the
But
commission
it's
in a
at
good.
what point the documentation is at. You know, a lot of the pre-apps, and I do it, you know, I come in and I just come in randomly and say, you know, I'd like to meet with you.
I have to call formal, that's fine. But I was gonna say, another item that we've had for your boards, and they've come up. I want you guys to think about this FEMA thing again, and when somebody says pending. Because it's really throwing some new homeowners a wrench by saying, well, wait a minute, you're saying my house has to be at 7, but pending is 8. And it's a tough pill to swallow for the community to say, okay, you wanna let it go?
It's the term freeboard.
Right.
And that's what the towns are adopting. I don't know, I honestly shouldn't know what the town is adopting as a freeboard. If FEMA said now, every town that we deal with has.
You're gonna go to the D.
They're adding it for.
Right. Which you guys do, because the building code's gonna call it.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, if FEMA's saying, okay, pending, now, here's the part that nobody talks about, pending could mean 10 years, not that.
Right.
We don't know when it's gonna be, but it still puts a scare in a client's mind of saying, you mean when I finish this in 2 years, I'm already gonna be non-conforming?
Well, I think I've been here 7 years, and I think the elevation found the FEMA maps has changed at least twice.
Right, well, then I think the county sued
Yeah.
when the last one came out, and they were like, whoa, we need
That's
to
why
address
it's
this.
so long. Is because the
Yeah.
county-
And that's why you see a lot of things, because they want to go to 8 and the town is like, whoa, take a breather.
Right. And I think some of that municipalities make you go to pending.
Yes.
It's like, we're designing, code is 7, and they're saying, no, pending's 8, you're building to 8.
And that's what they always say, call it free board, they don't call it pending. They say, oh, we just had it.
Yeah.
Because we know.
It's randomly, because we know it's coming.
Well, what, I said to this committee that I would, check with the village of Southampton and see how they've been dealing with FEMA and you sort of the triangle approach. You have the angle approach, which I think is much better. But what they've done on the freeboard is, as you get a little higher up, they take away, there's 2 feet of freeboard, and they're now taking, they're saying, okay, you're gonna lower.
Lower the roof, lower the heat.
And so that's how they're coping with it.
Yeah, it's, Town of Palm Beach used to have in their building height on the low-lying streets before the whole FEMA thing started going. So any street that's below 7, they changed building height. So if your house is in those low-lying streets, your building height is actually measured from the street. So it wasn't measured from your slab or some point of measurement or grade. You had to measure from the street. So on those streets, all the houses stayed a little bit more More modest. So there's a bunch of
Well,
ways.
something kicked this off. A house was built on Old School Road in the last few years, and it kind of started a little bit of the reason we're here today. Higher initial floor, 2-story house, 100-foot wide lot. I think what we're concerned is we don't really want Polo and Gulfstream Road to necessarily be 30 of those on each side of the road. So we want to hear your thoughts on what we may do to encourage people to do what Gary did, is build a lovely 1-story home instead of a 2-story home to get the square footage that they want. Maybe what would you do?
How'd you incentivize?
But we're looking for possible
A lot of
incentives.
times they give you more square footage. That's one of the standard ones. Instead of 30% lot coverage, you go to 35 for 1 story.
On the ground, right? So that goes back to lot coverage.
Yeah, because I'm not, part of this is just me, I'm not in favor of necessarily bringing in the side setbacks, because then you get to Delray where you can shake hands with your neighbor.
Yeah, I would.
Let me tell you, as a side, I played golf at Royal Palm Yacht Club last Saturday. And I was just floored.
All those houses.
These are like 7.5 feet setback.
Right.
And 35 feet high. So it's
Wow.
like canyons. You couldn't see anything. It's just.
That's why your setbacks are great. I mean, that's the floor. Minimum is 15. If the lot's wider, it's a 30% thing. So it's a great tool that you guys already have in place. That you're not getting that handshake. I mean, Tom, you're tall, you probably can.
But at the outset, your code is fine. It just needs to be tweaked a little. And I think what we wanted to show today, unfortunately, I've got to run. Hollis, you run right after me. I think the angles, think about that.
Right.
And I think those will help some of the concerns.
One more
Ground
question.
floor, they are without maybe a little larger ground floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, lot coverage mixed with the FAR.
Following up on Tom's question, I think the issue is that if you don't either reduce the setbacks in the front side, whatever, different for 1-story and 2-story, you really are stuck in a
That envelope.
very square envelope. So is there things like I think I talked about, what would be good for you selling your customer on a 1-story? If you did change the setback a little bit, because obviously the front setback feels better on a 1-story than a 2-story. There was also, we talked about maybe allowing a little more roof coverage for outdoor area if you do a 1-story instead of a 2-story. Keeping the 2-story the same without making anybody worse off. I don't know, what are the things that are most valuable when you sell your customers to convince them to do more than 1-story?
Well, I love when you don't have to necessarily count covered areas like you're talking about. The big issue that staff, and I'm not saying necessarily this staff, municipalities have, is people after that go ahead and fill those in with air conditioning space.
Yeah.
And, it becomes an issue for you, so you gotta be looking at
And
that.
Palm Beach doesn't allow that. They don't allow you to, they do, but they incentivize you to put more outdoor space.
Right.
By, in that cubic volume, because it counts in cubic volume, so you say you do a loggia, that loggia counts in that volume. And you're allowed to go like 3 or 5% over that volume with loggia. But you may never enclose that 3 to 5%. Right now, you can do it without a permit, you know how this works, people do it. Quiet, but
Why do you
basically,
look at Paul?
but here's the thing, Palm Beach, if you buy that lot from someone else and you go in and do some work on it, and that person, before you did it without a permit, you now have to go get a variance for that work.
Or rip it out.
But
Or rip it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But the ones that are freestanding like cabanas that are just hard roof, you gotta watch those, because those are the ones that will be encroached in.
Yeah.
And we saw that in Ocean Ridge. And they were all just setting us up.
But I do think to that point that Gary made, I believe you should encourage outdoor space. I'm constantly telling my clients, it's Florida. It's not Chicago, it's not New England. Guys, you want outdoor space, covered space, that's what it's about. Opening your doors and going into that space. So it's definitely one that we always encourage to do. That's for sure.
Likewise, we're.
Palm Beach also added, Palm Beach also added in the past maybe 5 years, a minimum front yard landscape percentage. So you got a minimum landscaping, right? But you also have a minimum front yard landscape. So then that stopped people from just going to massive motor courts, which don't help that view of those buildings. I think they're like 50% of your front yard has to be fully landscaped.
So it reduces driveways and yard.
Right.
I'm sorry, I do have to.
Thank you for your time, honestly.
No, I hope this is helpful.
We may drag you back in a month. No, we may behind you what we're thinking of, if we formalize it, we may want to.
That's why I brought Hollis, because he does all our analysis. So he's a wealth of.
I like to tell people that. It can't be that big.
You have like a modeling tool that you use that like you input you do it all.
Just do it. I mean, so you think of modeling. We do, or let's say, there's not one on here. We have to now in Palm Beach, for that cubic content, we have to, on the A1 drawing, the site plan, we have to put like a SketchUp clay block massing on there for them to see, and it shows the heights, it shows everything, it shows the 2-story in one color, the 1-story in another color, and it's to show, we have to verify that we did the cubic content properly.
There's no form to it, it's just.
Right, we just use SketchUp and push and pull. It is a good way to, I mean, I haven't really done that, just do it by hand real quick. And then they also have a big formulation in the code that you can kind of look at and know, but they know that people were probably abusing that, so now they make you put this kind of 3D just block on the drawing.
And that can be something you guys consider. Obviously, a lot of municipalities just do a colored elevation.
Right.
We now just do, we automatically do 3D modeling. I mean, we just include that in our presentation because it gives you guys a better visual when going before your boards. 2D is so hard to see if you're a layperson. And if you're in the industry, we know exactly what you're showing. But
Yeah, the downside to that, don't go on the aerial view. Somebody see his roots. I've seen that.
That's why we did away with 2D.
Gentlemen, I do have to run. Sarah, you want to hang out?
yeah, it's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, no, you say it. Yep.
You working on our favorite subject?
Me.
Well, those are all great thoughts. And it's Gary and Tom implied really trying to create opportunities to incentivize people to have one stories. But if we don't have the one stories, these angles would be very helpful as another tool. I have to admit that I get the basic concept. I'm thinking out loud if we could take at least an application, i.e. one on follow. And how that would work. I mean, I need to see illustrations.
The little one that we're doing?
That's his sense.
No,
We can bring in whatever you guys need and we can adapt it to show you.
it might be, because that's the most recent.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful piece of property.
Right.
It really, I happened to, in the last meeting, we had this gentleman who came and talked about how we might map the community as trade site. And for example, where I am on Polo Drive, we have an alley. And so we could, and the homes on the west side of Gulf Stream at the same alley here. We could push people further back and create a subsection, sub-district, whatever term you might want to use. And what we might do there could be quite different from what we would do on the code. Because that, the size of that property is bigger, et cetera, et cetera. But it would still be interesting to see how these triangles, like angles work both on the ground and on.
And we have found that out in a lot of municipalities, when you try to do one broad stroke, it's not fair. Because first of all, you've got different sized properties, you got this, so it is good that if somebody says, hey, let's take this section, we know these lots are smaller. You treat those differently. You got the ones on the water, like you said, I mean, it makes sense to do that. I think you'll find that you get more of a balance.
So you like the concept of sort of mapping based on.
Yes. Definitely, it's huge. Which, I mean, this is back in the 90s, Delray had so many issues that they said, they put together a board called the Matrixation Board, and I was on it. And they were trying to do the entire city with one code for houses. You just couldn't. At the end, when we presented to the commission, sure enough, the commission just said, we are now gonna look at individual neighborhoods. If you wanna do it, come up with your guidelines, and that's what Delray did. They did their beach guidelines, Lake Island did their guidelines. So all the areas are doing their own, but staff is reviewing everything and either approving it or saying this doesn't. I mean, like Tom mentioned it, you guys are fortunate with your code. These sugar cubes, if you will, that everybody sees that's modern. Well, typically people are forced it because they get 3 stories, because everybody will say they're measuring the top of a roof. And they're squeezing it in. That's the beauty you guys don't allow in your code. So I think there's a lot of good things you guys already do, have done your homework, that's for sure. But I think the big thing is gonna be still FEMA is gonna throw you guys off. When you see the house, and the only thing I don't wanna, and it will happen, it definitely will happen, at the end, whatever you guys implement, and the next house gets approved and gets built, these guys will get a call and say, what guidelines did you guys tweak? Because that's a big house. And you're gonna say, well, the FEMA shifted up another foot or something. So it's a battle we're dealing with.
Well, at the end of the day, the simple solution, if you can create the right incentives, is to keep the one story.
There you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sitting here
and
thinking,
ultimately, that's.
what are more incentives to get people to do
Well,
it?
Garrett said it too. I mean, sometimes it is the setbacks, the
Yeah.
change. Definitely the map, I mean, the square footage is definitely the first one that stays up.
Covered, but covered. There's one next to your home. How big is that house? 4 or 5,000?
Oh, that's 52, 53. It's a decent size house.
Or you allow more on 1-story homes, you allow more covered outdoor space.
Well,
On a 2-story house.
Yeah, there you go.
Right,
exactly, you know.
there's little
just playing
things
with
that
those celebrities.
makes clients, especially the younger set, makes it crazy. They're like, what? Taking this away from me. And that, and you mentioned earlier, it's like this generational change and I see it for the past 10 years. Everybody that's coming in that's under 55, roughly 50. If they're 40, forget it. They know everything. They know, and they don't have a car shop. No, they don't have a there's this funny little, and you probably seen it here, this thing that talks about design, and it says like, we design it, whatever, I'll call $500. And it says, we design it, you watch, $1,000. We design it, you join in, $2,000. You know, we both design it and draw it, it goes up, and at the bottom it says, you design it, we watch, $10,000. Right? And I tell you, it is true. It is true because I'm absolutely not kidding you, because everyone that comes in and it's like 45 and made it in New York and they're moving down here, they pick everything apart, and then they wonder why they're buying associated something all the time.
Yeah, California. But I think,
California, all
how
over.
about this, social media and or things like Pinterest, all that kind of stuff, you're usually coming in with clients saying, I want this.
Yeah.
Now, they don't know where that picture came from. And we'll be like, okay, that actually is in Arizona, great climate. You know, we have more rain, whatever it is, you gotta explain it to them, and they don't wanna hear it.
They don't want to hear it.
You know, I want to go back to introductory remarks. Mark. He was talking about, you wouldn't even discuss the now what's happening, and what's happening in Ocean Ridge, and what's happening in Delaware. What's not happening is here.
They're not doing it.
It's not good. And in my view is, if somebody in that generation wants to do whatever they want to do, there's lots of opportunities within a 3 or 4 mile. We don't have to accommodate that. In fact, people are tired of hearing me beat the same drum, but what makes this core district so unique is because it's different. And what I think also creates value is because it's different, not because of big houses. You can buy lots of big houses in Delray. And so what we need to do, and you know, frankly, I don't know, we should bring in all the real estate brokers in town and be sure they understand that, you know, when their client comes in, Because the real estate broker will tell them where.
Anything they need.
Whatever
And
they
it's like a real But it's true, it's true. You get a diet.
So I'm getting upset, but, these are all helpful thoughts. Before, so I don't forget, Trey, would you add to, running list of, things we're considering as this angle approach? Okay.
Angle of vision and, building.
Building height point. It's very common in historic districts. Right?
Yeah.
So what we'll do is right now reach out to the town of Palm Beach and see if we can talk to someone in their zoning department and get an idea of how that's implemented, how it works, and just sort of report back.
And Trey, did you guys also have, was it Damon Little that you guys talked to?
Yeah.
Okay, because he's excellent. He
He's
is,
the one I had to act,
Yeah.
what you would like.
Yeah, he's volunteered to come back.
yeah, he's great. He really is, knowledgeable guy.
I do have one quick question. In the Palm Beach zoning code, there's the similar.
Oh, yeah, Mark wanted to talk about that. That's
Do they apply to that?
absolutely.
Okay, so then tell me how a contemporary house is built next to a.
Because it's well done. Because it's a well done contemporary home.
But it doesn't look anything like it.
Yeah, but you can be dissimilar, but not too dissimilar. I know, but they also,
Now,
yeah, no, they
Oh, it does get a little gray.
it is a little gray. Also, think about it, you guys don't get variances, Palm Beach. It's that they've lost that a long time ago, but they were given variances because they had so many random, lot size. Right. So they had to start giving these variances, and people were designing wonderful homes, and they wanted like 2 more feet. Right, so this is a beautiful home, it's gonna make the street wonderful, it's not too big, it's not, we're gonna go with that, then that's everybody, right? And so they're left, but that's where they will allow these, let's say, in K-27, these guys out of Brazil, they came in and did an amazing contemporary home. It's amazing, it really is, and it's wonderfully detailed, it's a beautiful home. And it's sitting right next to a historic home. Now, it's also, you can't see it, because these people didn't want to see the street. So there's accommodations that were made to allow that home. But at the same time, sometimes when your house stays almost gonna get past the dark home, and they're like, some neighbor's like, I don't know what this other house, what if we've got hedges? Then they'll say, well, hedges could come down in a hurricane. Then they allow the temporary home, because it has hedges. It's well done, they'll almost allow it.
I think he's right, the detailing, that's the line, it's always in the detailing. You guys, actually, with your guidelines and styles, I don't think you need to go there.
You don't have to go there, because there's nothing in that book that says you can put a 1-story, Farnsworth House style home in here. It's just, it's not allowed.
Because somebody out there will not like it. Whether we say it's great detail, it's a great home, somebody is gonna say, I don't care what they say, it's an ugly home, it shouldn't be allowed. You guys should stick with what you do allow, which is good,
Exactly.
because you control it.
No one's coming in this town.
Trey, could you also add on something on FAR, 2 comments? One is, the one that Bill Koch brought up, we include certain outdoor areas that are covered in the calculation. We might want to give a relief on that.
At least for that one story.
One
Yes,
story.
definitely look at that.
Maybe it's worth a given portion.
The second comment, as I mentioned, the rest of the committee and staff, I would speak to the village of Southampton about that. It's a subject that we have a lot, again, everybody's probably employed by. So I spoke to, senior building inspector. I'm gonna have to do this for the individual fund. They originally didn't have any kind of FAA, and it was all subjective. And then they introduced a regulation that said that they could do 15% of the lot size at 2,000 plus 2,000. And then they reduced it from 15 to 12. And 12 plus 1,500, and then they went to 10%. So they've substantially reduced it over the last the last 10 years.
But it's just shut everybody up. I mean,
Going vertical.
yeah, they're going vertical.
Well, that's a fair question. I'm just talking about that. I didn't look at it in a broader context, but I think it's, as we look at different levers, and they haven't had any interjecting of lawsuits. And so, I think the FAR is another subject that we should look at. And also, I've cited that the regulations of the house I showed you, on my property here in Gulf Stream, I can build like 5,000. Under the rules of village of Southampton, I only 4,000. And it's sort of surprising. You would think it'd be right, in this the mindset of New York.
I'll let you have it.
So, it's, I'm not recommending, but I think that should be, list of the pros and cons. So we've added a bunch of things now to look at.
Well, one thing to your question a minute ago about the contemporary, Mark and I were talking about it. Yesterday, we brought up the code, and correct me if I'm wrong, it had to be 50% of wall area for windows. And then you also have the mutton pattern.
Yeah.
So you can't be too big. That right there is gonna scare away anyone that wants to try to put something a little more, flashy, right? That helps a lot. You have things that are built in there that help keep the traditional in the right in thought.
But it's still a good thing it goes back to those pre-app meetings, because again, we're meeting with a client says they want something, we already know it ain't getting approved here. Don't even.
And if they keep pushing, hey, let's go. Go to me. Go to talk to these guys.
Well, we just say you're probably better off getting a better architect. That's what I said. I have no problem with that. Get somebody better, that's more gifted, because I ain't going through this.
And they have pushed. They've said, we will go before the board and let the board.
They want to roll the dice.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
We've had it a number of times, but
Right.
instead we roll it and the obvious happens.
Well, it's crazy, in Palm Beach, you roll it there, you walked into our con with a 40-page set. And our last one was 40 pages, and it got deferred. I mean, how long does it take to build a 40-page set of drawings, right? I mean, how much money do these people spend? So there's that side, but, so that's why they're coming at it, these things, now we're gonna do it. Right?
Any other suggestions, ideas? So I'd like to try to keep it.
Sure, one of the things that was mentioned by Dana last month was identifying homes that the board felt were good examples of what we would like to see more of. So we just asked that if each individual member could just perhaps email Greg or myself the addresses that you believe are consistent with what we're trying to achieve. And we'll go ahead and ideally, maybe take some photos and have a small presentation, at least some materials, so we can discuss what works from those houses and how we can maybe encourage similar construction.
And one thing I got for you, and this is going in the wrong direction, so I'll just throw it out there, because I know I've talked to these guys about this. In your two-story house, you're still gonna have them, most likely. Your front entries, you do have them maxed out at 14 feet, which is fine, right? But if you ever want to change the design, so what happens is you typically are getting forced with either a flat little portico, where you have some columns, or you have a pediment, but you can't do a porch up there. Now, that might be, you don't want it to, but if you want to break up the other thing you always want to think about is breaking up styles too. You do want them to be different. You're 6 inches off of allowing a porch to be up there. So it is something to think about, because what happens is if you have a 10-foot high ceiling, the ground floor, you got 2 feet from the second floor structure, okay? So you're at 12 feet. You step down 6 inches. You got it. You're at 11'6", you need a 3-foot railing, you put you at 14'6". It's just, I'm saying from an architectural standpoint, you do want to try and break up some of these elevations with different looks versus getting the same type of pediment.
That's a very good comment.
Yeah, I like that.
You would be surprised at how many beautiful houses that come in, big 2-story homes. How much time we spend on the front?
Yeah.
Because you can't make it fit. And, right?
That's exactly
All
right.
the time.
Mhm.
So,
So you had that on the list to consider this change.
One last thing that came up when you guys were talking about homes, which you think are important homes or homes for people to look at. When I was on the Boynton Beach Historic Board when we were redoing the old high school. Imagine they're trying to save that high school, and we were also trying to do a small district. There's a little small area just west of Seacrest, which has, it's like one block, right? It has a ton of 20 homes, right?
Yeah.
And so we were trying to get that little area to do just a little district, right, for one beach, and they had nothing to do with it. But as they decided there to, in that timeframe, to document every house on like these 3 streets. We were down and we basically had a catalog of just the front elevation of these streets. And it took no time, and it's on the spreadsheet, and it's all in the PowerPoint, got a photo, and you guys,
Yes.
even just for your sake, having a job 5, you know, for the board, pull up, you know, 143 roll, boom, pull up, right? Or anything like that. You can even do it in a free app. Hey, these are the ones, take a look. It could be in Google Sheets that other people can even look at and see real quick. It helped us in those meetings. It was interesting.
I mean, there are many examples, a lot of them are up in my place, all these fronting procedures that are tired of what we need, that were approved before we had that regulation. They look fine to me. They really fit into the
Yeah,
community.
civilization didn't implode.
Exactly. Exactly.
Take a lot. On the notion of landmark historic, let's look into it, and particularly as it relates to, we were talking about creating a subsection for the polo cottages. I think that would be great if we could somehow allow those polo cottages to remain, but be able to update them and also some of the older sort of traditional Florida houses. So I like the idea of maybe within that layering, throw in another component.
Yeah, we've always been fairly happy that it didn't have historic, but also kind of concerned historic.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
it's worth that. It's worth starting to dig into. Obviously, cultural clubs on the national, but not like, you know, people like, what, that's not on their local historic, like.
Some people love it, some people hate it. I
Yeah.
mean, not that building, I'm talking about historic districts.
I think they're right. Yeah, I think they're right. Especially when we look at, you know, because we are taught to look bigger than just these stuff homes, right? Look at the area, the district, think about it.
I always will say something, if you're in a historic district, typically it's a good thing, because believe it or not, there are more waivers and variances that a historic board will look at. So you gotta balance those things out, because you're trying to save that 1-story structure, but yet you want to give them a little more relief. It might be relief on a setback, because they saved the structure. So those are things you should take into consideration if you ever go down that road.
Right.
Okay?
Anything else we should add? Okay.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're extremely helpful. Pleasure to be here. I'll close the meeting. Thank you.
So we're gonna let you know about the.
I'm gonna send out, I'll send out an email.
Think we're good enough? It's probably getting that.
Oh.
See you soon.